20. American Golden Age actors who served during World War II. That will shock you. They were the kings of the silver screen, idolized, immortalized. And then they vanished into war zones. What would make the world's most famous faces trade red carpets for rifle fire? These 20 Golden Age actors didn't just play heroes. They became them, risking everything when the world teetered on the edge of chaos. Some flew combat missions. Others stormed beaches. One even survived 6 bullets on D-Day. You've seen their movies, but you've never heard this part of the story. Stick around, because what you're about to discover will change how you see Hollywood forever. Subscribe now to Uncovered Tinseltown Uncovered, and let's uncover the truth. Clark Gable had already stepped away from the Hollywood spotlight to answer a more somber call. At 41, the legendary king of Hollywood, known for his unforgettable performance as Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind, joined the U.S. Army Air Forces in 1942, following the tragic death of his wife, actress Carole Lombard, in a plane crash during a war bond campaign. Gable's grief became a driving force, and unlike many of his contemporaries who lent support through public appearances, he chose to enlist and serve on the front lines. Despite his age and fame, Gable did not receive any special treatment. He attended officer candidate school in Miami Beach and trained as an aerial gunner. Assigned to the 351st Bomb Group of the 8th Air Force, he was stationed in England and participated in 5 high-risk combat missions aboard B-17 flying fortresses over Nazi-occupied Europe. His role as a waist gunner subjected him to direct enemy fire, proving he was not merely a symbolic figure. Adolf Hitler reportedly offered a reward to anyone who could capture Gable alive, underscoring his global fame and the morale impact he had on Allied forces. In addition to active combat, Gable directed and narrated Combat America, a wartime documentary showcasing the bravery of American bomber crews. Gable was honorably discharged as a major in 1944. Though he returned to Hollywood, the war profoundly changed him. His portrayal of strength in films took on a new authenticity, shaped by his first-hand exposure to the sacrifices of war. His service remains one of the most remarkable transitions from cinema royalty to combat-ready airman. Jimmy Stewart was one of America's most beloved actors, already an Academy Award winner for the Philadelphia Story 1940. But his true legacy extended far beyond the screen when he became the first major Hollywood star to enlist in the U.S. military during World War II. At 33 years old, Stewart joined the U.S. Army Air Forces in March 1941, even before the attack on Pearl Harbor, driven by a family tradition of military service and a deep sense of duty. Initially rejected for being underweight, Stewart undertook a rigorous eating regimen, consuming steak, milkshakes, and pasta to gain the pounds necessary for acceptance. Once enlisted, he quickly proved himself as a natural leader. With a civilian pilot's license already in hand, Stewart was assigned as a flight instructor before pushing hard for a combat role. His persistence paid off. By late 1943, he was flying bombing missions in Europe. Stewart commanded a squadron of B-24 Liberators in the 445th Bomb Group, conducting dangerous missions deep into Nazi territory. He flew over 20 combat missions, often under heavy fire, and rose through the ranks to become a full colonel by war's end. Among his decorations were the Distinguished Flying Cross and the Air Medal with 3 oak leaf clusters. Stewart was known for his humility. He rarely discussed his wartime experiences, despite achieving more as a serviceman than many officers without fame. He later continued service in the Air Force Reserve, achieving the rank of Brigadier General, the highest military rank ever held by an American actor. Returning to Hollywood in 1946, Stewart's roles deepened in complexity, with films like It's a Wonderful Life resonating powerfully with post-war audiences. His legacy is not just that of a screen legend, but of a true American hero. Christopher Lee. While most know Christopher Lee for his chilling performances as Dracula or Saruman, few realize his real-life military service was even more astonishing than any character he played. Born in 1922, Lee was just 17 when he first volunteered to fight for Finland in the Winter War against the Soviet Union in 1939, a prelude to his lifelong opposition to totalitarianism. Though Britain's involvement in that conflict was limited, it was only the beginning of his storied service during World War II. Lee officially joined the Royal Air Force in 1941, training to become a pilot. A severe eye problem grounded him, but rather than accept a desk job, he shifted to intelligence work. He soon became involved with the long-range desert group LRDG, an elite British unit in North Africa that laid the groundwork for the modern-day SAS. These operatives operated behind enemy lines, performing reconnaissance and sabotage missions. Thanks to his fluency in multiple languages, English, French, German, and Italian, Lee became invaluable in decoding communications and planning operations. He later served in Italy, where there is credible evidence suggesting he worked with the Special Operations Executive SOE, the top-secret British wartime organization focused on espionage and aiding resistance groups across Axis-occupied Europe. Bound by the Official Secrets Act, Lee never disclosed specific missions, saying only that he had seen terrible things. One of the few wartime comments he allowed was a haunting remark: "I've seen men die right in front of me. So many I became hardened to it." It's a statement that underscores the trauma he carried with dignity. After the war, Lee transitioned to acting, bringing a gravitas to roles that only real-world experience can provide. His stoic intensity on screen was no act. It was the mark of a man who had truly walked through darkness. Mel Brooks. Long before he revolutionized comedy with The Producers and Blazing Saddles, Mel Brooks faced the deadly seriousness of World War II. Born Melvin Kaminsky in Brooklyn, New York in 1926, he was just 17 when he was drafted into the U.S. Army in 1944. Too young to vote, yet old enough to be sent into one of the war's bloodiest chapters. Brooks was assigned to the 1104th Engineer Combat Battalion, a division of the 78th Infantry. As a combat engineer, his job was both critical and terrifying, disarming landmines ahead of advancing troops, building bridges under enemy fire, and clearing roadways during intense combat. During the Battle of the Bulge, the largest and deadliest battle fought by American forces in the war, Brooks put his life on the line to secure vital passageways. He later joked, "I was a combat engineer. The two things I hate most are combat and engineering." But underneath the humor was a young soldier doing a job few had the courage or precision to perform. Brooks used his trademark wit as a survival mechanism. He once famously set up a makeshift loudspeaker near enemy lines and played Al Jolson songs to taunt German troops. Even amid warfare, his comedic spirit remained unbroken. His military experience profoundly shaped his worldview. The absurdity of war, the cruelty of bureaucracy, and the triumph of the human spirit, all themes that would later become staples in his films, were first witnessed on the European battlefield. Brooks didn't glamorize his service, but neither did he forget it. After the war, he used the GI Bill to study at Brooklyn College and began writing comedy professionally. What the world would come to know as a fearless comedic genius first emerged in foxholes, shaped by danger, darkness, and the will to laugh anyway. Eddie Albert, best remembered for his roles in Roman Holiday and Green Acres, earned more than applause during his lifetime. He earned the Bronze Star for valor under fire. Long before television brought him into American homes, Albert was piloting landing craft in the Pacific Theater during one of the war's deadliest engagements, the Battle of Tarawa in 1943. Born Edward Albert Heimberger in Illinois in 1906, he enlisted in the U.S. Navy and was soon thrust into amphibious warfare, transporting Marines from ship to shore under relentless Japanese artillery fire. At Tarawa, a heavily fortified atoll in the Gilbert Islands, Albert's mission involved guiding troops through shallow reefs and chaotic surf while under enemy attack. Amid a nightmare of explosions and bloodshed, Albert noticed dozens of wounded Marines stranded in the water. Without orders, he made a life-risking decision: turn his craft around, enter the kill zone, and rescue his fallen comrades. He did this not once, but repeatedly, ultimately pulling 70 injured Marines to safety, often under direct fire. His selfless actions went beyond the call of duty and earned him the Bronze Star with a Combat V for heroism. Albert rarely spoke about his war service, choosing instead to let his actions and later his advocacy speak for him. The trauma of Tarawa left a lasting mark. After the war, he became a passionate environmentalist and veterans' rights advocate, using his platform to support PTSD awareness before it had a name. Returning to Hollywood, he brought an emotional depth to his roles that many credited to his real-life battlefield experience. Eddie Albert was more than a leading man. He was a quiet hero whose courage under fire saved lives and whose commitment to service continued long after the guns fell silent. Charlton Heston. Long before parting the Red Sea in the Ten Commandments or winning an Oscar for Ben-Hur, Charlton Heston was navigating the skies of the North Pacific as a young serviceman in World War II. Born John Charles Carter in Illinois in 1923, Heston enlisted in the United States Army Air Forces in 1944 at the age of 21. Though his screen career hadn't yet launched, his discipline and commanding presence were already evident. Heston trained as a radio operator and aerial gunner aboard B-25 Mitchell bombers medium-range aircraft, used extensively for patrol reconnaissance and attack missions. He was stationed in the Aleutian Islands off Alaska, a remote, freezing, and fiercely contested front in the Pacific. The flying conditions were notoriously hazardous. Fog, violent wind gusts, and sub-zero temperatures made every mission a test of endurance and nerve. As a crew member aboard multi-hour sorties, Heston's job required constant focus. He was responsible for maintaining radio communications and manning defensive guns against potential Japanese fighter attacks or submarines. Though the Aleutian campaign had largely quieted by his deployment threats, still loomed, and missions could turn deadly with little warning. After the war, Heston returned to civilian life and used the GI Bill to study acting at Northwestern University. His wartime experiences instilled a quiet fortitude that became the foundation of his most legendary roles. Strong moral characters who faced overwhelming odds. He seldom spoke of his service, but his deep sense of patriotism remained influencing his later activism and public speeches. Charlton Heston's military chapter may not have been widely publicized, but it played a crucial role in shaping the man who would become one of Hollywood's most towering figures on screen and in American culture. Lee Marvin. Before Lee Marvin delivered his signature gravel-voiced performances in The Dirty Dozen and Point Blank, he endured the brutal horrors of World War II as a Marine rifleman. Born in 1924 in New York City, Marvin enlisted in the United States Marine Corps in 1942, just months after the attack on Pearl Harbor. At only 18, he was assigned to the 4th Marine Division, one of the most battle-hardened units in the Pacific Theater. Marvin saw heavy combat in multiple island invasions, including the bloody battles of Saipan and Tinian. During the assault on Saipan in 1944, Marvin was severely wounded by Japanese machine gun fire, shot in the lower back and the sciatic nerve. He lay in a foxhole for hours before being rescued, an ordeal that left him with chronic pain and led to a medical discharge. For his wounds and valor under fire, Marvin was awarded the Purple Heart. His wartime experiences shaped him irrevocably. Marvin struggled with what would now be recognized as PTSD and used alcohol to cope issues that haunted him even during his acting career. Yet he also carried the fierce loyalty and brotherhood of his Marine unit with him for life. Marvin's on-screen presence, intense, authentic, and often emotionally raw, was deeply influenced by the trauma and toughness of war. He brought a rugged realism to every role, drawing not from imagination, but from lived experience. Though rarely one for ceremony, Marvin often visited Marine reunions and supported veterans' causes. He never glamorized his military service, but his deep connection to it remained until his death. Lee Marvin wasn't just acting when he portrayed battle-worn soldiers, he was channeling the real thing forged on the beaches of the Pacific in the crucible of war. Tony Curtis. Before he dazzled audiences with his charm in Some Like It Hot or showed dramatic depth in The Defiant Ones, Tony Curtis served his country with resolve during World War II. Born Bernard Schwartz in the Bronx in 1925 to Hungarian Jewish immigrants, Curtis grew up during the Great Depression and watched his father struggle as a tailor. The attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941 ignited a fierce sense of patriotism in the then 16-year-old, and by 17 he enlisted in the United States Navy in 1943. Curtis trained as a signalman, a job requiring expert proficiency in Morse code, semaphore, flag signaling, and visual communication. He was assigned to the USS Proteus, a submarine tender that provided critical support in the Pacific theater. While Curtis wasn't in direct combat, the ship operated in high-risk areas where enemy submarines and kamikaze attacks posed constant danger. On September 2, 1945, Curtis witnessed history firsthand from the deck of the Proteus anchored in Tokyo Bay. He watched the formal surrender of Japan aboard the USS Missouri. That moment, signaling the end of the war, left a profound impression on the young sailor. After the war, he used the GI Bill to study acting at the Dramatic Workshop in New York. With matinee idol looks and natural charisma, he quickly caught the eye of Universal Pictures. But behind the glamour was a man shaped by discipline, war, and survival. Curtis credited his Navy experience for teaching him focus and giving him perspective. "The war made me a man," he later said. "It gave me something to fight for." His work ethic and resilience carried into a prolific career spanning over 100 films, proving that his success wasn't just built on good looks, it was forged in service and shaped by sacrifice. Paul Newman, celebrated for his piercing blue eyes and magnetic screen presence, also carried the quiet scars of a war nearly lost to history. Born in 1925 in Shaker Heights, Ohio, Newman was just 18 when he enlisted in the U.S. Navy in 1943, eager to serve during World War II. Like many aspiring young men of his era, he hoped to become a Navy pilot through the V-12 training program, but was disqualified due to color blindness. Refusing to be sidelined, Newman trained as a radio man and rear gunner on torpedo bombers. He was eventually assigned to the USS Bunker Hill, an aircraft carrier that saw intense action in the Pacific. In May 1945, a twist of fate likely saved his life. Just before the ship was to engage in the Okinawa campaign, his pilot developed an ear infection, grounding their aircraft. Days later, the Bunker Hill was struck by 2 Japanese kamikaze planes, killing 393 sailors. Newman narrowly avoided becoming one of them. Although he rarely discussed his wartime service, the experience deeply influenced his views on life, mortality, and purpose. He was awarded several medals, including the American Campaign Medal and the World War II Victory Medal. After the war, Newman returned to civilian life and used the GI Bill to attend Kenyon College, then the Yale School of Drama, before eventually making his way to the Actors Studio in New York. His wartime brush with death made him profoundly aware of life's fragility, which added depth and introspection to his iconic roles in films like Cool Hand Luke and The Hustler. Newman's legacy includes not just cinematic brilliance, but a life rooted in service, humility, and generosity, a spirit he would later extend through his global philanthropic work. Richard Burton, widely regarded as one of the greatest Shakespearean actors of the 20th century, lived a life of extraordinary contrast, rising from poverty in a Welsh mining village to commanding stages and screens worldwide. Yet before he became a titan of British and Hollywood theater, Burton served his country in the Royal Air Force during the final stages of World War II. Born Richard Walter Jenkins Jr. in 1925, Burton was just 18 years old when he enlisted in the RAF in 1944. Although the war was beginning to turn in the Allies' favor, the threat of Nazi Germany still loomed. Burton trained as a navigator, a crucial role in Britain's air operations that required precision mathematics and composure under pressure. Navigators ensured aircraft could carry out bombing runs and return safely, often relying on complex charts and quick calculations amid enemy fire. While he never saw direct combat due to the war winding down before his deployment, Burton's RAF experience was not without impact. The intense training and military structure honed his discipline, maturity, and sense of duty qualities he would later channel into his commanding stage presence. Upon his discharge, Burton returned to academics, earning a scholarship to Exeter College at Oxford, where he refined his theatrical skills under the mentorship of Professor Neville Coghill. The blend of wartime experience and elite training laid the foundation for a career defined by gravitas, emotional depth, and unmatched vocal power. Although he rarely referenced his service publicly, those who worked with him noted a quiet, soldier-like resolve beneath his tempestuous artistic persona. Richard Burton's war may not have been waged in the trenches, but his readiness to serve and the character forged in uniform added gravitas to the roles he would later immortalize, from Hamlet to Mark Antony. Charles Bronson. Before he became the silent, steel-eyed vigilante in Death Wish and the stoic force in The Magnificent Seven, Charles Bronson was an aerial gunner in one of the most dangerous theaters of World War II. Born Charles Dennis Bukinski in Pennsylvania in 1921 to Lithuanian immigrant parents, Bronson grew up in abject poverty, working in coal mines as a teenager. When war broke out, he saw a path to something greater and enlisted in the United States Army Air Forces in 1943. Bronson was assigned as a B-29 Super Fortress tail gunner, flying perilous missions over Japan during the final year of the Pacific Campaign. His job was harrowing: defend the aircraft's rear from enemy fighters while flying at altitudes exceeding 30,000 feet under brutal conditions. With limited protection and high casualty rates, B-29 missions were among the most dangerous roles in the war. Bronson flew 25 combat missions and was wounded by shrapnel during one sortie, earning him a Purple Heart. These experiences, filled with life-or-death stakes and the psychological toll of watching comrades die, shaped his stoic, resilient persona in later life. After the war, he used the GI Bill to study art before eventually transitioning to acting in the 1950s. Unlike many of his peers, Bronson didn't seek glamour. His performances radiated quiet toughness, restraint, and intensity, mirroring the man who had once manned a machine gun in the skies over Japan. He rarely discussed his service, but it was clear in everything he did. That lived-in look, the thousand-yard stare, the weariness behind the eyes, it wasn't acting. It was Bronson's real war carried with him into every frame of celluloid. Henry Fonda. The epitome of American integrity on screen in films like 12 Angry Men and The Grapes of Wrath proved that same moral backbone in real life when he volunteered for service during World War II. Born in 1905 in Nebraska, Fonda was already a major Hollywood star by the time the United States entered the war. At age 37, far older than most recruits and well past the draft age, he put his career on hold and enlisted in the U.S. Navy in 1942. Fonda's decision wasn't for publicity. "I don't want to be in a fake war in a studio," he once said. "I want to be in the real thing." Initially serving as a quartermaster third class aboard the USS Satterley, a destroyer operating in the Atlantic, he participated in convoy protection missions, helping to secure vital shipping routes from German U-boat threats. Later, Fonda advanced to the role of lieutenant junior grade and was transferred to the Pacific Theater, where he worked in naval intelligence during key island-hopping campaigns. For his service, he received a Bronze Star for meritorious achievement, underscoring his commitment and bravery. Fonda rarely spoke of his wartime contributions, instead channeling the depth and weight of his experience into his acting. His post-war roles often reflected a world weariness and moral authority rooted in first-hand exposure to the cost of war. After his discharge in 1945, Fonda returned to Hollywood with a new sense of purpose. His measured voice, quiet dignity, and unwavering decency on and off screen mirrored the values he lived in uniform. To the public, he was America's conscience. To the Navy, he was a patriot who served not for glory, but because it was right. Gene Autry. Known as the singing cowboy Gene, Autry was already a beloved figure in American entertainment when he made the patriotic decision to enlist in the United States Army Air Forces during World War II. Born in Texas in 1907, Autry had become a household name through radio, film, and records, famous for his clean-cut image and Western charm. But in 1942, following the attack on Pearl Harbor, he suspended his flourishing career and joined the fight. At age 35, Autry was older than the average recruit, but his sense of duty was unwavering. He initially enlisted as a technical sergeant and later trained to become a pilot. In 1944, he was commissioned as a flight officer and assigned to the Air Transport Command, an essential logistics unit responsible for ferrying troops, cargo, and equipment across global war zones. Autry's most dangerous assignments took him to the China-Burma-India theater, where he flew perilous missions over the Himalayan mountains on a route known as the Hump. This treacherous aerial corridor was notorious for sudden storms, deadly altitudes, and limited navigational aids. Many pilots didn't survive, yet Autry repeatedly completed these missions, delivering critical supplies to Chinese and Allied forces fighting Japanese troops. Though his service wasn't in combat roles, the dangers were real, and his bravery earned him respect throughout the military. After the war, he was honorably discharged in 1946 and returned to his entertainment career with an even stronger public image. Autry later became a major figure in American culture, not only as an entertainer, but also as a business mogul and owner of the Los Angeles Angels baseball team. Yet behind the stardom was a man who proved at the height of his fame that patriotism was more than a performance. It was a calling. David Niven, renowned for his suave wit and effortlessly British charm in films like Around the World in 80 Days and The Pink Panther, lived a real-life adventure far more daring than any film role. Born in 1910 in London, Niven had already served in the British Army before turning to acting. When World War II erupted in 1939, he was one of the few major film stars to return immediately to active duty, setting aside his burgeoning Hollywood career without hesitation. Initially rejected due to age and physical limitations, Niven persisted and was recommissioned as a lieutenant in the Rifle Brigade, a prestigious infantry unit of the British Army. His natural leadership and discipline quickly earned him promotions, and he eventually joined the elite British Commandos, tasked with carrying out some of the most dangerous missions behind enemy lines. Later, Niven was assigned to the Phantom Signals Unit, a top-secret group responsible for coordinating battlefield communications and gathering real-time intelligence during combat. On D-Day, June 6, 1944, he landed on the beaches of Normandy, alongside thousands of Allied troops directing communications and troop movements under withering German fire. Niven's heroism was never self-publicized. He spoke sparingly about the war, preferring to honor fallen comrades rather than recount his own bravery. He was awarded the Legion of Merit by the United States and other honors for his service. After the war, Niven returned to Hollywood with renewed gravitas. His performances gained deeper nuance, informed by the trauma and discipline of war. Though forever the gentleman in public, those closest to him knew he was also a hardened veteran who had witnessed the brutal realities of combat. David Niven's true legacy bridges the worlds of courage and charisma, a soldier who fought for freedom and returned to bring light and laughter to the screen. Kirk Douglas. The fiery force behind Spartacus and Paths of Glory was shaped by hardship long before the cameras ever rolled. Born Ishur Danielovich in 1916 to poor Jewish immigrants in New York, Douglas overcame a childhood of poverty and discrimination to become one of Hollywood's most powerful leading men. But before his rise to fame, Douglas enlisted in the U.S. Navy in 1941, shortly after America entered World War II. Commissioned as an ensign, Douglas served as a communications officer aboard the USS PC-139, a sub-chaser deployed in the treacherous waters of the North Atlantic. These small, fast patrol vessels were tasked with hunting enemy U-boats and protecting Allied convoys, duties that carried immense danger as German submarines sought to cripple supply lines and isolate the British Isles. Life aboard the PC-139 was rough. The cramped quarters, freezing weather, and constant threat of torpedoes tested even the most hardened sailors. Douglas was responsible for maintaining secure radio communication during operations, a task that required precision calm and the ability to coordinate movements in high-pressure conditions. He earned praise for his composure and adaptability traits that would later define his on-screen personas. In 1944, Douglas sustained injuries in an onboard accident and was honorably discharged. Though the incident curtailed his military service, it became a turning point in his life. With the help of the GI Bill, he enrolled at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, launching a career that would span over 6 decades and include more than 90 films. Douglas often credited his wartime experience with instilling the strength and resolve that fueled his performances. His characters often battling oppression or inner turmoil echoed his real-life experience fighting tyranny at sea. Kirk Douglas didn't just play heroes, he lived like one both in uniform and in legacy. James Garner. Before he became the effortlessly cool star of The Rockford Files and Maverick, James Garner, born James Bumgarner in 1928 in Oklahoma, earned his toughness the hard way through war. At just 16 years old, eager to serve during the final stages of World War II, he lied about his age and enlisted in the U.S. Merchant Marine, a civilian force crucial to supplying Allied troops across global battlefronts. Life at sea was no glamorous escape. Merchant ships were prime targets for enemy submarines, and the threat of torpedo attacks was constant. Garner endured brutal working conditions and persistent seasickness, a challenge that tested his physical and mental resilience. His time in the Merchant Marine was relatively short, but it forged in him a determination that would serve him well in the years to come. Garner's military service didn't end there. When the Korean War broke out, he enlisted again, this time with the U.S. Army, serving as a rifleman in the 24th Infantry Division. His role placed him on the front lines of a violent and unforgiving conflict. He was wounded once by friendly fire from a strafing U.S. fighter plane, and again by shrapnel from enemy artillery. Though injured, he refused evacuation until his unit was safe. He was later awarded 2 Purple Hearts, though due to bureaucratic delays, his second wasn't officially recognized until 1983. Garner rarely spoke about his time in combat, but his grounded, no-nonsense screen presence was undeniably shaped by it. He brought authenticity and quiet depth to every role, especially those involving moral complexity or personal struggle. Whether in a foxhole or on a film set, James Garner embodied courage without fanfare. His legacy isn't just in film and television, but in the battlefield grit and wounded valor that forged him long before the cameras ever rolled. James Doohan. Best known as Montgomery Scotty Scott, the beloved chief engineer of the USS Enterprise on Star Trek, James Doohan lived through a very different kind of command center, the beaches of Normandy on D-Day. Born in Vancouver, Canada in 1920, Doohan joined the Royal Canadian Artillery in 1939 at the outbreak of World War II and quickly rose to the rank of lieutenant. On June 6, 1944, Doohan led his unit onto Juno Beach as part of the Allied invasion of Nazi-occupied France. The chaos of D-Day was immense, with German gunfire, landmines, and artillery shelling all around. That night, tragedy struck. Doohan was shot 6 times by friendly fire from a jittery Canadian sentry. 4 bullets hit his leg, 1 lodged in his chest, miraculously deflected by a silver cigarette case in his breast pocket, and 1 severed the middle finger of his right hand. He survived, but permanently lost that finger, which he cleverly concealed throughout his acting career, using camera angles, props, and blocking. His dedication to the craft never allowed his injury to become a limitation. Doohan returned to service after recovery and became a pilot flying artillery spotting planes over enemy territory, a job that required nerves of steel and exceptional navigation skills. After the war, he transitioned to radio and theater before landing his iconic Star Trek role in the 1960s. Fans were often unaware that Scotty, the man who could fix a warp core in under 5 minutes, had once crawled through bullets and barbed wire to defend freedom. James Doohan's military legacy is one of bravery, survival, and quiet endurance. He wasn't just the engineer of a fictional starship, he was a real-life war hero who helped shape the modern mythology of heroism in both life and television history. Denholm Elliott. The acclaimed British character actor known for memorable roles in Trading Places: A Room with a View, and Indiana Jones began his life in the arts far from the stage inside a World War II German prison camp. Born in London in 1922, Elliot joined the Royal Air Force in 1939, driven by a quiet sense of patriotism and a calling to serve. He trained as a navigator, a position that demanded focus, advanced mathematics, and steady nerves, especially during bombing raids over Nazi-occupied Europe. By 1942, Elliot was part of an RAF bomber crew participating in night missions over Germany. During one of these high-risk sorties, his plane was shot down and he was captured by German forces. He spent the next several years as a prisoner of war in a POW camp. Conditions were harsh, with minimal food, harsh winters, and constant uncertainty about survival. Yet it was within those barbed wire fences that Elliot discovered his love for performance. He began acting in amateur dramatics alongside fellow prisoners, an effort to maintain morale and distract from the trauma of captivity. The performances, staged in secret or in makeshift conditions, gave him both purpose and the emotional tools to endure. After the war, Elliot trained formally at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, RADA, quickly earning a reputation for portraying flawed, deeply human characters. The vulnerability and gravitas he brought to the screen were rooted in lived wartime suffering. Though he rarely spoke publicly about his imprisonment, those close to him acknowledged the profound impact it had on his craft. For Elliot, acting wasn't merely a career, it was a survival instinct born in the darkest of times and refined in peacetime brilliance. Tony Bennett. Before he became one of America's most treasured voices, Tony Bennett, born Anthony Dominic Benedetto in 1926, survived the brutal closing chapters of World War II as a young infantryman in the U.S. Army. Drafted in 1944 at age 18, Bennett was assigned to the 63rd Infantry Division and deployed to the front lines in France and Germany as the Allied forces pushed into the heart of Nazi-controlled Europe. The horrors he witnessed in the final months of the war profoundly changed him. He participated in active combat and was present for the liberation of a Nazi concentration camp, an experience that left him both traumatized and deeply committed to peace. But Bennett also fought another more personal battle: racism within the U.S. military. After sharing a meal with a black friend in defiance of segregationist norms, Bennett was demoted and reassigned to grave-digging duty as punishment. That act of resistance marked the beginning of Bennett's lifelong fight for civil rights. Following the war, he joined the Special Services, entertaining troops through song and honing the vocal talents that would later captivate the world. He performed under his birth name, developing a style that blended jazz, pop, and soul. Upon returning home, Bennett used the GI Bill to study at the American Theater Wing and launched a music career that would span 7 decades. With hits like I Left My Heart in San Francisco, he became a cultural icon, always grounded in humility shaped by the battlefield. Unlike many who buried the past, Bennett carried his wartime memories into his art and activism. He stood for dignity, justice, and compassion, not just in music, but in life. His voice became not only a source of comfort, but a beacon of principle shaped by a war that nearly silenced it. So now that you've heard the untold war stories behind Hollywood's golden legends, what do you think truly defines greatness? Is it fame, fortune, or the courage to serve when the world needs you most? These 20 actors didn't just play heroes, they were heroes. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Did any story surprise you? Should more celebrities today follow in their footsteps? Let's talk about it below. And if you're moved by powerful stories that shape history, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Uncovered Tinseltown Uncovered, where true legacy lives on.